Have you ever looked at an older person in a wheelchair and quietly wondered, will that be me someday? Not because they did anything wrong, not because they stopped trying, but simply because time seemed to catch them before they were ready. If you're over 60, I want you to stay with me for the next few minutes, because I'm about to tell you something that may completely change the way you think about growing older. Last spring, I celebrated my 100th birthday. Not in a hospital, not inside an assisted living facility, not surrounded by machines reminding everyone that I was fragile. I celebrated it in my own kitchen. I stood at my own stove, cracked 2 eggs into a pan, made my morning tea, carried my breakfast to the table without anyone helping me, at 100 years old, and every single morning, when I walk out to my mailbox, I thank God for another day my legs still obey me. Now, before you think I'm one of those extraordinary people who won the genetic lottery, let me stop you. I wasn't. I buried 2 husbands. I survived a world war. I lived through the Great Depression as a little girl. I've watched telephones become smartphones, letters become emails, horse-drawn wagons disappear, and self-driving cars begin to appear. I've had friends who were healthier than me die 20 years ago. I've also watched neighbors become prisoners inside their own homes long before they reached 80. The difference wasn't luck. It wasn't expensive medicine. And it certainly wasn't miracle supplements advertised on television. The difference was thousands of tiny choices made every single day. Today I want to tell you about 3 vegetables that quietly became my companions over the last several decades. No, they're not exotic. You won't find them hidden deep in some rainforest. You don't need to spend hundreds of dollars ordering them online. They're probably sitting in your grocery store right now. But before we talk about those vegetables, I need to tell you something much more important. Because food is never just food. Every meal is a message. Every plate tells your body one simple thing. I believe you're worth taking care of. Or, I've given up. That sounds dramatic. I know. But after living for 100 years, I've learned that the smallest habits are often the loudest declarations, especially after 60. Because once we grow older, our bodies listen more carefully than they ever did before. They notice everything: the extra sugar, the missed sleep, the loneliness, the stress, the lack of movement, the hope. Yes, even hope. Our bodies respond to all of it. I didn't understand that when I was younger. I thought aging happened all at once, like someone flipped a switch. One day you were independent, the next day you weren't. Now I know that's not true. Growing old happens one breakfast at a time, one afternoon walk at a time, one healthy decision, or unhealthy one, repeated thousands of times. And that's why I want to start with the vegetable that changed my life first. Broccoli. I know, you probably weren't expecting that. Neither was I. When I was 73, I began waking up with stiff knees. At first, I blamed the weather. Then I blamed my age. Eventually, I blamed myself. Getting out of bed became slower. Walking downstairs required both hands on the railing. Gardening, something I had loved since I was a little girl, suddenly felt exhausting. One afternoon, I visited my doctor. After examining my knees, he leaned back in his chair and sighed. He said, "Margaret, you're getting older." Yes, let's call our storyteller Margaret. He smiled kindly, but his words landed like stones. This is early arthritis. We'll help manage the pain. Manage the pain. Those 3 words haunted me all the way home, because they sounded like surrender. As if pain had officially moved into my house and there was nothing left to do except make room for it. That evening, I sat alone in my kitchen. I wasn't angry. I was disappointed. Disappointed that independence suddenly felt negotiable. Then I remembered my mother. She lived until 92. She planted vegetables until she was almost 90. She knelt in her garden every spring. She climbed ladders to pick apples. And in all those years, I never once heard her complain about aching knees. Not once. I closed my eyes and tried to remember her kitchen. It came back immediately. The smell of fresh bread, chicken soup simmering on the stove, and broccoli. Always broccoli. She grew it herself, every summer. She never boiled it into mush, just a few minutes of steaming. A drizzle of olive oil, a little sea salt, nothing more. When I was young, she used to tell me something I thought was silly. She'd smile and say, "Green food keeps the fire quiet." I thought she meant it poetically. Years later, science explained exactly what she meant. One of the greatest enemies of healthy aging isn't visible. You can't feel it directly. You can't always see it in the mirror, but it's working quietly inside millions of older adults every day. Chronic inflammation. Scientists now understand that low-grade inflammation contributes to many of the conditions that slowly steal independence from older people. Joint pain, heart disease, type 2 diabetes, memory decline, even muscle loss. It's like a tiny fire burning inside the body year after year. You may not notice it today, but after 10 or 20 years, the damage becomes impossible to ignore. That's where broccoli surprised me. Not because it's magical, because it helps your own body defend itself. One of broccoli's most remarkable natural compounds is called sulforaphane. Researchers have spent years studying how it supports the body's own antioxidant defenses. Instead of simply covering symptoms, it encourages your cells to activate protective systems that already exist. Think about that. Your body was designed to heal. Sometimes, it simply needs the right tools. I began eating broccoli 4 or 5 times every week, never drowning it in cheese sauce, never frying it, just lightly steamed, sometimes with garlic, sometimes with lemon, always simple. 3 months later, something unexpected happened. Getting out of my favorite chair became easier. Walking through the grocery store no longer exhausted me. The morning stiffness started arriving later. Then, one day, it didn't arrive at all. When my doctor repeated my blood tests, several inflammation markers had improved. He looked surprised. "What changed?" he asked. I smiled. I finally started listening to my mother. Now, I'm not telling you broccoli cured arthritis. That would be dishonest. I still have birthdays. I still have wrinkles. I still move slower than I did at 40, but I also walked to my mailbox this morning. I watered my flowers afterward, then I came inside and made my own breakfast. At 100 years old, I'll gladly take that victory, because independence isn't built on miracles. It's built on mornings like that. And the second vegetable, the one that may have saved not only my eyesight, but also my confidence, was something I ignored for most of my life: spinach. Now, before you roll your eyes and think, "Here comes another lecture about spinach," I understand. I felt exactly the same way. For most of my life, spinach was simply something I pushed around my dinner plate. I didn't dislike it. I just never thought it mattered very much. Looking back now, I wish someone had sat me down 50 years earlier and told me what I'm about to tell you. Because by the time I truly appreciated spinach, I was already 84 years old, and I was scared. Not because I was dying, because I was beginning to lose something I treasured almost as much as my independence: my eyesight. It started quietly. At first, I blamed the lighting in my living room. Then I blamed my reading glasses. The letters on the page seemed softer than before. The edges blurred. Sometimes the words almost shimmered. I found myself rereading the same sentence 3 or 4 times. Not because I couldn't understand it, because I couldn't see it clearly enough to trust my own eyes. Reading had been one of my greatest pleasures since childhood. Books had carried me through grief, through lonely winters, through nights after burying my husband, through afternoons when the house felt painfully silent. The thought of losing that terrified me. So I scheduled an appointment with my eye doctor. After several tests, He gently explained that I was showing the early signs of age-related macular changes. He spoke kindly. He wasn't trying to frighten me. He simply told me the truth. As we grow older, the center of the retina, the macula, becomes more vulnerable. Many people slowly lose the sharp central vision they rely on for reading, recognizing faces, driving, sewing, writing, or even pouring a cup of coffee safely. Then he said something that stayed with me. He mentioned two nutrients, lutein and zeaxanthin. He explained that these natural pigments accumulate inside the retina, almost like tiny sunglasses protecting delicate eye tissue from years of light damage and oxidative stress. Then he smiled. You'll find plenty of them in dark leafy greens, especially spinach. I walked out of his office thinking, really? That's it? After all those expensive eye vitamins advertised on television, one of the best foods had been sitting in grocery stores my entire life. You know, people often talk about eyesight as though it's simply another medical issue. But once you've reached your 80s or 90s, vision means something much deeper. Vision is freedom. The day you can no longer safely drive yourself to the grocery store, someone else must decide when you buy your food. The day you struggle to read a birthday card from your grandchildren, something precious quietly slips away. The day you can't clearly recognize the smile on the face of someone you love, a different kind of loneliness begins. That realization changed everything for me. I didn't want perfect eyesight. I wanted enough vision to keep living my own life. So I made spinach part of my routine, not because I expected miracles, because I wanted to give my body every chance possible. Every morning, I folded fresh spinach into scrambled eggs. At lunch, I tossed handfuls into vegetable soup. Some evenings, I enjoyed a simple salad with spinach, olive oil, walnuts, and fresh lemon juice. Nothing fancy, nothing expensive, just consistent. Week after week, month after month, year after year. Something interesting happened. It wasn't dramatic. There was no morning when I suddenly woke up seeing like I was 30 years old again. Life rarely works that way. Instead, the decline slowed. Reading became enjoyable again. My eyes didn't tire as quickly. I could finish an entire chapter before feeling fatigued. When I returned for my annual eye examination, my doctor looked pleasantly surprised. Everything has remained remarkably stable, he said. Stable. At 85. That word sounded beautiful. Because stability means time. Time to keep reading. Time to keep writing letters. Time to keep recognizing the faces of the people I love. But spinach gave me something else that no one had warned me about. Mental clarity. Now let me explain what I mean. Have you ever walked into a room and forgotten why? Have you ever searched everywhere for your glasses, only to discover they were already sitting on your head? We've all laughed about moments like that. They're part of being human. But many older adults quietly worry about something much deeper. What if this keeps getting worse? That fear can become overwhelming, especially after watching friends struggle with memory loss. Spinach contains nutrients that support healthy brain function, including folate, vitamin K, magnesium, and naturally occurring antioxidants. No, they're not magic. No vegetable can guarantee you'll never experience cognitive decline. But healthy brains, just like healthy hearts, appreciate consistent nourishment. I noticed subtle changes. I could follow long conversations without becoming mentally exhausted. I remembered appointments more easily. I found myself planning tomorrow's meals without writing everything down. Even crossword puzzles became enjoyable again. Not easier, just enjoyable. There is a difference. One afternoon, my granddaughter came to visit. She brought me a new mystery novel. She smiled and teased, "Grandma, this one has over 400 pages." I laughed. "Good." She looked surprised. "You really think you'll finish it?" I answered, "I plan to finish several." She laughed, but I wasn't joking. That evening, I read for nearly an hour. The next evening, Another hour. A week later. I mailed her a handwritten letter telling her exactly who I believed the murderer was before the final chapter. She later admitted, I was right. That small moment meant more to me than she will probably ever know, because it reminded me my mind still belonged to me. As we grow older, we often focus on staying alive, but staying alive isn't enough. The real question is, can you still enjoy your life? Can you still laugh at a clever story? Can you still learn something new? Can you still become curious? Can you still change your opinion after hearing someone else's perspective? A healthy mind doesn't simply remember. It continues growing. That realization completely changed the way I thought about aging. I stopped asking, how long will I live? And started asking, how well can I live today? That one question quietly transformed my mornings. Instead of counting birthdays, I began counting opportunities. One more book, one more conversation, one more walk outside, one more sunrise, one more chance to learn. Then, sometime in my late 70s, another problem appeared. This one wasn't in my eyes. It wasn't in my knees. It was in my legs. At first, my feet always felt cold, even during summer. Then my ankles began swelling every afternoon. Climbing stairs became strangely difficult, not painful, just heavy. As though my legs belonged to someone else, as though my blood had forgotten how to move. I didn't realize it then, but my circulation was quietly asking for help. And the humble orange vegetable that eventually answered that call was sitting in nearly every kitchen in America. Carrots. By the time I reached my late 70s, my body was sending me quiet warnings. Nothing dramatic. Nothing that forced me into the emergency room. Just small changes that slowly became impossible to ignore. My feet stayed cold, even on warm afternoons. My ankles puffed up by dinner. Walking up the 12 steps to my bedroom left my legs feeling strangely heavy. Not painful, just reluctant. It felt as though every step required a conversation between my brain and my legs that took a little longer than it used to. I mentioned it to my physician during a routine visit. He checked my heart, my blood pressure, my pulse. Everything looked reasonably good. Then he said something that stayed with me. Margaret, circulation often changes as we age. The goal isn't simply keeping blood moving, it's keeping the entire body supplied with what it needs. That sentence followed me home. Because circulation isn't just about your heart. It's about your brain receiving oxygen, your muscles receiving nutrients, your feet sending balance signals fast enough to prevent a fall. It's about every part of your body continuing to communicate with every other part. When circulation begins to decline, the whole orchestra starts playing out of rhythm. Around that time, I began paying closer attention to one vegetable I had always underestimated. Carrots. Ordinary, inexpensive, easy to overlook. Most people think of carrots as children's snacks or something served on a party tray beside ranch dressing. I certainly did. But carrots are naturally rich in beta-carotene, potassium, and a variety of antioxidants that support healthy blood vessels and overall cardiovascular function. Again, I'm not claiming they perform miracles. What I am saying is this: when you consistently give your body what it was designed to use, it often rewards you in quiet ways. I roasted carrots with olive oil until the edges caramelized. Sometimes I sprinkled them with cumin. Sometimes rosemary. Other days, I simply peeled one and ate it raw while reading the morning newspaper. Crunching into that fresh carrot became part of my daily rhythm. Simple, reliable, comforting. Months passed. Then one afternoon, I realized something unusual. I had climbed the stairs without thinking about them. No mental preparation. No pause halfway up. Just 12 ordinary steps. That may not sound impressive. But when you're approaching 80, ordinary is extraordinary. Soon after that, I noticed my hands felt warmer. My ankles swelled less. My evening walks became easier. My doctor smiled during my annual checkup. "For someone your age," he said, "your circulation is remarkably good." I laughed. "Don't tell my carrots. They'll become arrogant." He laughed too. "Growing older doesn't mean losing your sense of humor. If anything, you need it even more. But now I need to tell you something that matters even more than broccoli, more than spinach, more than carrots. Because if you remember only one lesson from my 100 years on this earth, let it be this: healthy food alone is not enough. I've known people who ate beautifully. Fresh vegetables, whole grains, lean protein. They still faded. I've known people who exercised every morning. They still became bitter, still became lonely, still gave up. The human body is more than chemistry. It's more than vitamins, more than minerals, more than blood tests. There is another force that quietly shapes how we age. Purpose. Every single morning, before my feet touch the floor, I remain still for a few moments. I don't reach for my phone. I don't rush toward the coffee pot. I simply breathe. Then I quietly say, "Thank you." Not because every day is easy. Some mornings my back aches. Some mornings I miss people who are no longer here. Some mornings the house feels painfully quiet. I say thank you anyway. Thank you for another sunrise. Thank you for another chance. Thank you for another ordinary day. You know, when you're 100 years old, you stop assuming there will always be another tomorrow. Each morning feels borrowed, and borrowed days deserve gratitude. Science has finally begun confirming something many older people have quietly known for generations. Chronic stress damages the body. Loneliness damages the body. Hopelessness damages the body. They raise stress hormones. They disturb sleep. They increase inflammation. They make healing more difficult. But gratitude, meaning, connection, these things influence the body too. Perhaps not in ways we completely understand, but anyone who has lived long enough can feel the difference. A hopeful heart carries the body farther than a hopeless one. There was another habit that changed me more than any diet ever could. At 92, instead of slowing down, I began volunteering at my local library, twice each week. Some people thought I was crazy. "You've earned your retirement," they said. I smiled. I've already had plenty of retirement. The library hosted a reading circle. Some members had poor eyesight. Others struggled with reading after strokes. Some simply wanted company, so I read aloud. We laughed over funny characters. We debated endings. Sometimes we cried together. One afternoon, we finished a novel about an old dog waiting faithfully for its owner every day at a train station. There wasn't a dry eye in the room, including mine. Something remarkable happened during those months. I slept better. I woke with more energy. I looked forward to Tuesdays and Fridays, not because I felt young again, because someone expected me to be there. That feeling, being needed, may be one of the greatest medicines ever discovered. Researchers now talk about purpose, social connection, and community involvement as important factors in healthy aging. I simply call it having a reason to get dressed in the morning. People who feel useful often remain active longer. People who contribute to others frequently experience less depression, less isolation, sometimes even better physical health. Again, not because life becomes easier, because meaning changes how we carry difficulty. You don't need to start a charity. You don't need thousands of dollars. Purpose can be wonderfully ordinary. Cook soup for a sick neighbor. Call an old friend. Read stories to your grandchild. Teach someone how to bake bread. Water the flowers of the widow next door. Write a handwritten letter. Smile at the grocery cashier. Small acts. Repeat it often. Quietly reshape both lives, the givers and the receivers. When people ask me the secret to reaching 100, they usually expect one answer. One miracle food, one magical exercise, one hidden supplement. I disappoint them every time. Because there isn't one secret. There are hundreds of small ones. Eat food that still looks like food. Move every day. Protect your sleep. Stay curious. Laugh often. Forgive sooner. Spend less time complaining. Spend more time serving. Never stop learning. Never stop loving. And never convince yourself that your best years can only exist behind you. I still steam my broccoli. I still fold spinach into my morning eggs. I still roast carrots every week. But none of those habits would matter very much if I had decided life no longer needed me. The body listens to what the heart believes. If your heart has already surrendered, your body often follows. So feed both. Feed your body with good food. Feed your mind with good books. Feed your soul with gratitude. Feed your community with kindness. This morning, before the sun was fully awake, I stood once again in my little kitchen. I opened the curtains. The birds were singing outside. The kettle began to whistle. I cracked 2 eggs into my favorite pan, added a handful of spinach, set broccoli aside for lunch, smiled at the carrots waiting in the refrigerator for dinner. Nothing extraordinary, just another ordinary morning. Except, I'm 100 years old, and I was standing, cooking my own breakfast. If you're watching this today and you're over 60, I won't tell you not to be afraid. Fear isn't your enemy. Fear is simply proof that your life still matters to you. Let that fear become motivation. Walk into your kitchen. Take a short walk after dinner. Call someone you haven't spoken to in months. Plant something. Cook something. Learn something. Help someone. And tomorrow morning, when your feet touch the floor, before you do anything else, take one slow breath. Look toward the light coming through your window and whisper, "Thank you." Because healthy aging isn't about becoming younger. It's about becoming fully alive with whatever years you've been given. I'm 100 years old. I still have plans for tomorrow. And I sincerely hope you do too.